I want to introduce myself. I'm Tom O'Brien. I'm the managing director at Caserta, and I want to welcome everybody to the Data Trends in Banking and Finance. And we have great panelists today, and we're going to cover a lot of very interesting topics. And I'd like to start with the introduction so you know who the panelists are. So I'll first introduce Joe Lacavara, and Joe's the interim chief technology officer at Third Point. And Third Point's a New York-based hedge fund with over 17 billion in assets under management. And prior to joining Third Point, Joe was the interim chief technology officer at Waterfall Asset Management. And he had a lot of other previous roles, which included chief technology officer at Perella Weinberg Partners Development. He was also the manager at Tribeca Global Management and manager of operations and technology at SAC Capital. Joe also held a lot of key technology management roles in prime broker technology groups at Deutsche Bank, Lehman Brothers, and Goldman Sachs. And Joe, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Tom.
Next, I'd like to introduce Peter Antonucci. Pete's the managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing. He's got management responsibility for Pershing's technology, which is inclusive of the NetX 360 management accounts and business intelligence platforms. Pershing provides broker-dealers, asset managers, intermediary firms, and financial institutions with a comprehensive range of products, services, and solutions. And he also managed all the technology platforms for Albridge, which is now part of BNY Mellon's new Pershing X. And Albridge provides data and reporting solutions, consolidating data from both custodied and non-custodied to provide a holistic view of their assets. And lastly, prior to assuming this role, Peter was the business technology officer for Pershing's managed accounts business and was responsible for application development. He also had the oversight of the program management, and also the quality assurance. Next, it's my honor to introduce and welcome Peter. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Chris Sifter, who I work very closely with. And Chris is a principal consultant at Caserta. He has over 30 years of data and technology consulting experience, and he specializes in large-scale data management, integration, warehousing, governance, and analytics projects. Chris specializes in assisting our clients implement transformative data solutions in a variety of industries, with a pretty heavy concentration on financial services and banking, leveraging a wide range of enterprise platforms and cloud ecosystems. Chris, thanks for joining us. So again, we're going to have some very interesting topics, and I'm going to go around with different questions that put together for the panelists. And Joe, if I may, I'd like to start with you.
Sure.
Okay. So Joe, where are you on your data journey now at Third Point, and what are some of your recent successes?
So I'd say from the standpoint of our data journey, we're in the earlier stages. From a maturity scale, if I said we were looking at a 5-point scale, we're probably at around a 2.5. We've got, there's a recognition that data is an asset. So there's a pretty large amount of data that's used around the firm in a variety of ways. We have a data science team, we have an analytics team, we have a software and data team. So we have 3 teams who are working in and around data, using data for supporting our front office and research teams. So there's a lot of use of data. Well, why we're not terribly mature about it, though, is and this is probably the case for many people, is that data is in a bunch of different places. It's not necessarily the easiest to get at. We don't excel currently at self-service data or analytics, where I could really have end users go out and get data on their own. It's still very much a case where you as an end user would have to come to one of those groups and make an ask for you to get to data. So that's why we're in the early stages there. But we certainly had a recognition of that, and have done a data strategy project with Caserta that's just completed. And now our goal is now take what we did for that strategy. We did a POC as part of that. Is like, okay, now we need to apply that and move how we're currently operating with data into that new model.
Well, thank you, Joe. Pete, what are your thoughts on that? What are some of the, explain a little bit about your data journey, maybe some of the successes that you folks have had.
Sure, Tom. When I think about the journey, I think it's been driven by our strategy and our growth. Just to summarize the strategy, we're looking to be more data forward. And really what that means is we're trying to drive data and analytics early, present, and often in the user experience. The data journey, I would summarize, is this. I don't think we're going to be much different than a lot of the firms that are on the call or you work with, the Caserta. In the beginning, we have an objective to run our apps. And then there was data around running those apps so that we could, build a competent platform for our clients. We were successful. We encountered a lot of data growth. With that data growth, we had to also grow a lot of functionality on the platform. So sort of creates an exponential effect between the growth and then more data based on that new functionality. And then we began to report on the data. And then if you fast forward to now, you have a big data scenario where we find ourselves at Pershing, supporting over 60 million accounts. And so with the arrival of this modern era in the big data, we kind of see data in and of itself becomes a problem. We have to address some complicated compliance and regulatory use cases. We need to scan, large volumes of data. So we leverage big data technology like Spark, Hadoop, and we also have a traditional data warehouse. Our applications in and of themselves, they create some secondary data, especially in the form of log data. The log data is incredibly important to us. The problem there is really about high velocity, high volume. So there we leverage tools like Elasticsearch and Splunk so that we could better consume and leverage that data. And then as you have more data, cost becomes a concern. And we find ourselves now trying to, figure out how to, continue to grow without exponentially growing costs. And to that end, we start looking at lower cost object storage and leveraging cloud-based technologies.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it. Pete, I'm going to throw a question your way. Tell us ways that you use data to impact, the business operations, right? And you mentioned you have over 60 million clients, which is huge. And how do you create a more engaging experience for your customers? How has this created a competitive advantage for you, the data?
Sure. I mean, so Tom, I think, data has always shaped our industry. I think right now we're looking at three trends that are just creating some acceleration in how data is leveraged. The increase in the amount of data available, the computing power and the data storage capacity we now have at a reduced cost than we may have had years ago. And then advances in machine learning methods to analyze complex data sets. It's all about the data. This has become clearer to us as we engage more in the world of AI. And for us, many use cases have been solved. The modeling and coding problem has been solved. But the main challenge we have right now is getting the right data to run the models. So the basic needs like data curation, data quality, data management are critical to providing AI-driven solutions. And as a result, we have initiatives internally to address our data management needs, just creating that enterprise foundation, an enterprise-wide data platform, making sure we have the correct data masters, and then bringing in the right tools for data governance to build out our AI and ML capabilities and reuse that across the platform. Having a flexible data architecture, maturing our data management practices, strengthening our defense, mitigating risk to be compliant with regulations. And this includes identifying things like authoritative data sources and improving our data practices to manage the life cycle, managing data quality, privacy, and security. And then, building out the platform for transformation, right? From premise cloud to off-premise cloud, just being able to work with data that's streaming, flexible, being able to ingest, aggregate on the fly. These are all things that we need to do to build a competent platform. And then just building out our data products. How do we build data products that are driving operational efficiency, leveraging technologies such as AI ops, leveraging data to improve the client experience, and just launching new products based on data.
Yeah. Thanks, Pete. I appreciate that. Joe, I'm going to throw one your way again, okay?
Sure.
All right. So what are some of the ways that business users are able to be more self-sufficient now leveraging data, and what needs to be done to make it possible for them?
So where we're at currently in that sort of, on the continuum there is we're still giving them dashboards that have been created by, either the analytics or the technology team, but they've got opportunities to interact with that data where they can filter that data, they can group that data, they can at least operate with that data, which has been, somewhat curated for them at this stage. Where we really want to get to, though, and really move the needle where we can put that, the power of that in the end user's hands, is we'd like them to be able to do some of that on their own, where, if they just need to go explore data and they want to just, if this is a one-off analysis they're doing, we need to give them tools to do that. So the things that we're looking at now are getting an appropriate data catalog in place, getting data lineage in place, because right now, if I gave somebody access to a database and said, here you go, here's a query tool, and here you have access, they're not going to be very successful at that. So we want to be able to have data in a place where they can consume it more easily, because right now it's in disparate places. Some of it's in a quasi data warehouse, some of it's in a processing system, some of it's semi pre-digested in an analytics database. So it's a challenge for an end user to operate in that mode. It's a challenge even for a technologist to operate in that mode sometimes. So by putting the data in a consolidated source, in our case, that end state is going to be in Snowflake, and then giving them a tool and as well as a catalog and data lineage, then they should be able to operate on their own. So we're in the early stages of that. We're looking at tools to do that right now. We're going to stand up a POC of Sigma very shortly, which has a very Excel-like interface, easy for people to understand, where that should at least get a subset of users the ability to go and operate on their own.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. I'm going to go to my friend Chris. Hello, Chris. You ready?
Hello.
All right. So what changes are you seeing across the financial institutions? You're working with many of them in the way that data is being used and managed. And then I have a follow-up question. What are you seeing as critical factors for making data initiatives more successful?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because I think in the past 2 or 3 years, there's been a shift. And I think the two biggest changes that I'm seeing center, number one, around the fact that financial services institutions are finding value in data. It's not just an offshoot of the applications. It has value in and of itself, and it needs care and feeding and the right attention spent to make sure that it's usable. And it's being used for generating revenue, for elevating the customer experience, for really creating insights that weren't there before. And that value is really driving a competitive advantage for those institutions that can make use of their data, which I think gets to the second major shift that I'm seeing, which is the centered focus around customer and the customer experience being at the heart of almost every strategic initiative that I see, whether it's enhanced CRM or better prediction, or even just enhancing their touch points with both in-person and online interactions. Data sits at the heart of every bit of that. And what I'm seeing is the data house has to be in order. And I've heard a little bit of that from both Peter and Joe. Data governance, and this is really the success piece that I want to focus on, data governance is really at the heart of a lot of it. This information, in order for it to drive models or decisions or being able to create that elevated experience, it has to be trustworthy. And data governance is not a one and done cleanup effort. It has to be part of everything that touches and moves and interacts with information and data. So that data governance has to really be part of just life as usual. The processes, the people, the organizational change that you put in place for data governance, it is critical for success, because being able to base decisions on information that you can't trust, well, that is a recipe for disaster right there. So
Chris, let me ask you a question on that point,
Yeah.
because I'm curious what you see out there. I think that there's actually a challenge where people are using data more often, but they haven't invested in data governance yet. Do you see that out there?
Oh, we see it all the time. In fact, one of the things that we're hearing is, gosh, we want more self-service for our business users being able to use and analyze data. But they're going after sources of information that may be a stale snapshot, or it's an island of data or dark data that people have sitting on their desktop that isn't governed. It's not validated. It's not reconciled. It's not under audit, as an example. So what we're seeing is really that need to do both. You have to advance the technology and the access, but you have to make sure that what comes along for the ride, it's that governance, it's the catalog, it's, hey, this term means this to the business, and this is how you use it, and making sure it's clear and accessible and readily available. Otherwise, you will have three people showing up to the same meeting with three different answers when asked, how many clients do we have? How many accounts do we have? Things like
Well,
that.
I think the other challenge when you start talking about data governance, and I've seen this before, is there's an assumption that is a technology problem.
I agree. It absolutely isn't. And in fact, some of the first things that you can do to move the needle on improving data governance have nothing to do with technology. It's your process, it's the ownership, it's stewardship, it's the process that you put in place for remediating and, well, identifying and remediating problems. So you can do a lot even before you install a single piece of software or implement anything with technology.
Hey, Chris, it's Pete. Some of the critical success factors for us, with digitizing our data into composable microservices, that gave us the ability to insulate the persistence tier, and that gave us the capability of allowing us to re-engineer. That gives us some ability to take advantage of cloud and enables us to use the same data for greater use. Again, I think this is going to sound repetitive, but the creation of the enterprise data masters for projects such as KYC and managing risk and AML are critical for us. Extending our capabilities with data quality, the business glossary, and data modeling have been effective. And in our resiliency model, making sure our active architecture and our capacity is in place so that we could support the greater demand that's coming from all this use of data. And, I think much of it, what we spoke about, gets back to the journey, right? You get the journey right and you get your strategy right. And that it's like the price of admission of how you get to develop more advanced products. And to that end, here, we've developed some patented products that are, helping our advisors get customized reports, helping home offices, create their own customized reports that they could build off of our technology. And, with that, we see some success, like with, simplifying data, right? We created a money in motion tool, which allows our broker dealers and RIAs to look at the flows of money coming in and out of their organization. This used to be something that was incredibly complicated to create, but with some of the more modern tools we've been able, and some of the work that we've done in data management, we've really been able to accelerate some of our development. And then with personalization, we were able to use AI so that on the platform, we could use things like search boosting, so we could get the most relevant search results displayed prominently. And that algorithm also helped us look across other areas of the platform. So when you're looking at a client, you can grab things like operational alerts about what's going on. You can look for revenue opportunities or changes in the client's behavior that alert the end user to, like, there's a change in how this client is behaving, or there's something you need to alert them to. Those are the kind of things that I think are, this whole process of improving your data capabilities. Like, there's a lot of benefits that come down the road that you don't see, like when you're stuck in the initial phases of it.
Very good. Interesting answers. Thanks, fellas. Joe, going back to you, how have you incorporated, I know you're working a lot on the data strategy, as you mentioned, how are you incorporating your data strategy into your broader business strategy and the priorities of the business?
So I think what was interesting for us is, as we were starting to look at an overall strategy for the business and technology, we're looking to basically develop a new target operating model. There's been a lot of systems in place, a lot of processes in place for, the last 15 to 20 years. It was time to take a look at that and think about how we can sort of reimagine that. Look at new processes, look at new technology, new systems, et cetera. And as we were sort of putting that together, the one thing that we started to weave through that was, at the intersection of all of this is data, right? We've got data in existing systems. You got all these new systems we're going to put in that are going to be producing new data. And, that data is going to be in a lot of different places. So if we did nothing there, we would simply be adding on and having yet, double and triple the number of data sources where people would have to go to. So we said, okay, let's then take a different approach while we're looking at the overall target operating model. Let's put in the need to work on data strategy. And when we showed that to people pictorially, we always represented that data strategy as running through horizontally everything else we were doing. And that strategy included, getting us to a better place in a more modern data stack. It included things like data governance and observability and, having a catalog and having lineage. So we started to weave that in all of the conversations where people understood that it wasn't another thing. It was part and parcel of the overall strategy we wanted to look at.
Very good. Pete, many of our customers, as Chris will tell you, they're having trouble attracting and also obtaining good data talent, data specialists. So what have you done at Pershing to attract and retain data specialists? And are there any other organizational changes that you've made to make the data initiatives more successful?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. And look, every financial services organization right now is engaged in programs and products to be more data-driven, adopt cloud, improve their experience with analytics, and improve data governance. We talked about a journey earlier. We're all on this journey. And this journey needs skills and talent. And right now, for the most part, we're all fishing in the same pool, right? We're all like looking for the same talent. Undoubtedly, we're seeing something that's unprecedented. It's a seller's market, top talent with data skills and expertise, just driving greater demand. A lot of it also has just been exacerbated by other things that have been going on with, the Great Resignation, changes due to COVID, consolidation, regulation, the drive to go digital, the drive to build great experience, and just keeping pace with technology. All of this is just, driving the need for greater talent. And it was kind of interesting last week. I got a survey from Gartner. Actually, I got the survey results from Gartner on something that they sent out. They asked about, I think it was about 100 senior financial services executives. How much confidence do you have that you will be able to effectively execute on your top priorities in 2022? And in that, there was probably about a dozen and a half initiatives that Gartner seated these executives with. And they all rated their level of confidence from about 73% down to 30%. But in these initiatives, you have like, managing operational risk, implementing DevOps, re-engineering automating processes, modernizing legacy systems, and so on and so forth. But the last item that these executives said they had confidence in was hiring and retaining talent in a competitive job market. And when I read this, I just, like I said, like to me, I felt like there was this contradiction. Like, how could you have so much confidence that you're going to deliver on all your initiatives, but retaining and attracting talent is going to be the greatest challenge for you. So it's something that's going across our whole industry. And I think, we got to address this like acute, talent gap. There's definitely a shift in expectations. From my perspective, we have to master the things we can control, the work environment, work assignments, hybrid work environment, making sure our staff has development plans, addressing things like D&I, ESG. Our staff has new needs. They expect greater flexibility in their work arrangements. Staff we try to hire will also have these expectations. And I think a lot of people are just expecting a greater work-life balance. They also, I think like new hires and existing staff want to see their firms invest and advocate for initiatives that are important to them. I think we see a lot of that going on in firms right now. And under these conditions, for me personally, working with my staff, the first thing I do is just defend their time. I think that's incredibly important, making sure my engineers are not dealing with a lot of bureaucracy, and I'm sort of like making sure that time isn't getting hijacked by like well-meaning staff who are providing them with something that's good to do when they should be working on something that's the best for them to do. And then, working at a large bank, we work with our HR partners to ensure that we're sourcing, from diverse pools to attract talent where we can. And, I think we're all looking at different strategies that we could get talent through the door, right? And some of it requires us thinking out of the box a little bit. And,
Peter, you guys retraining folks in-house to move from sort of more traditional, IT roles into the data space?
Yeah, it's a great point, Joe. I think we, it's amazing to me how these people, the people in data and analytics that have like a love of data, they like the engineering part of it, and they just love solving problems with data. They kind of like gravitate, they gravitate, to the places that have big data, the data tools and the analytics. So we kind of, we'll kind of recruit internally. And then, we have training tools for just about anybody. But even internally, like we're all looking for the same people. There's multiple areas of a large bank. It's not like one data and analytics.
No, and the challenge is in financial services, we're competing with people outside of financial services who, now have very attractive opportunities for people.
That's right. That's right. And we're seeing new entrants. When we ask our staff if they're leaving, where they're leaving for, it's names we've never heard before.
One of the interesting things in this area centers around the fact that there's starting to be a much smaller division between IT folks and business folks, because what you're getting are more and more of the IT and data folks having to understand every bit of the ins and outs of how the business runs. And then also the business folks having to know a lot more about data and SQL and how to use it. And that chasm is starting to shrink in many ways. It's one thing to have somebody who understands all the data technologies, but if they don't understand what's in a call report, or they don't understand how to leverage the information that's going into a financial statement, you have to be married up with somebody on the business side. And I'm seeing that skill set has to have both sets of knowledge and capabilities, and that's hard. You have somebody that understands data and they understand banking and financial services. They're a real powerhouse, and they can really get a lot of things done. It's just those people don't exist out there without a lot of experience, having grown up in one of those industries.
Yeah, I mean, also on the more junior side, we will take resources outside of financial services if they've got the technical chops. We're okay training them on the business aspects.
I think to your point, Chris, data literacy is so important for the business owners. And a lot of them need to be brought up to speed on that. We're seeing a lot of that, as you know. We're wrapping up shortly. And before we go, we have a ton of experience on this panel. And I just wanted to ask you, and maybe I'll start with you, Chris. Is there anything we didn't cover or things that we did cover that you want to elaborate more on that you think would be helpful to the audience?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would want to say is anytime you start peeling the onion around your data environment and the current state of your data, you quickly find that there's 20 years of pent-up demand for better data and all sorts of problems that you try to have to deal with. It can be quite unnerving when you start to get into it. And one of the things that I would say is I've seen so many places fail because they start to take a look at what's ahead of them and they stop and they don't do anything because it feels like they have to tackle every problem. And the ones that have been successful, what I've seen is they pick something that they can be successful with and they keep the momentum, they keep moving forward, even if it's just small steps. The one thing that will do the most damage is just doing nothing. And by doing nothing, the problem just gets bigger. But start with one. Pick a scenario, pick a use case that you can have a meaningful impact on and implement technology there. But make sure that you're picking those that that you can use it again and again and again and start to get those successes. And it doesn't hurt when some of the first things you do drive revenue. That really helps to get the momentum and keep the momentum. Data.
The messaging has to be clear too. I think because I think what happens is people are frightened then when they see how big a task that is, and they go back in their shell. I have a day job. We got to keep the business running, so I don't have time for that new stuff. So I think it's important to take this on. You're not going to snap your fingers and make this happen. It's got to take this on in small chunks and build momentum.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say to go along with that is data in and of itself should be a program that has its own ownership, its own funding, its own life cycle for improvement. When it becomes just an offshoot of a project, then the momentum stops. Yeah. And if you're tying your strategic initiatives around data to the success of a project, when that project is done, you lose all that momentum. And being able to say that you have data operations that are part of your business as usual, that helps you carry forward the improvements beyond that.
Yeah, that's very insightful, Chris. Thank you. Joe and Pete, anything we didn't cover that you would like to cover or anything else you want to elaborate on?
I think I'm fine, Tom.
I was just going to say, just taking what Chris said, because we're very much in that space right now, having sort of just completed our strategy initiative, the early stages. We're very much now in the mode of, and we're literally meeting tomorrow to talk about, okay, we did our POC, we proved that the new tech stack that we looked at can work. What's our next step? Let's pick the next candidate that we're now going to move into that space. And one of the things we're trying to do is to sort of figure out a way to drive demand. So I mentioned that we're going to use Snowflake as our end state for data. So hence that's why we want to try to get a user tool in place that's looking at Snowflake, like a Sigma, where we can then start giving users access, who then will hopefully ask, hey, how come I can't get to that other data? Which then lets us help build that list of things that needs to be converted.
Yeah.
So we want to see how we can drive demand there.
Right. Well, this was a great panel. So everybody knows these are some of the best people in the industry. You're looking at between the three of them, well over 75 years of experience. And we're very fortunate to have the three of you on this panel. And I just want to tell everybody, if you have any questions, please submit them to us and we'll get them to Joe, Pete, or Chris, whoever the question is meant for. And if Caserta can ever be of any help to you with any initiatives or issues that you have, we're happy to do so. So with that, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your participation. It was a lively conversation, and I'm sure that the audience benefited from it. Thanks so much, and I hope everybody has a great day.